So let's go ahead and talk about how to save your first $10,000. Now, I remember when I saved my first $10,000, it really was the moment when I felt like I could breathe financially because I was no longer living paycheck to paycheck. Should any major expense come up, more than likely I was going to be able to cover it and not be screwed up financially. Now, according to statistics, only 36% of people have $10,000 or more saved. So I want to share with you how I was able to go from paycheck to paycheck to saving $10,000 and then moving onward to 20, 50, and then $100,000+ over the course of my journey. The very first thing that you need to do is understand why you must save this $10,000. I don't care what your goal is. You must understand why you need to have this goal met. This isn't going to be an easy journey, and there are going to be some ups and downs along the way. And if you do not have strong reasons for why you need to save this money, you're going to fall off and you're going to quit at some point before you achieve it. So my question to you is, why must you save this $10,000? Perhaps that $10,000 is going to help you buy a more reliable car. Or perhaps you're wanting to get a down payment for your first home. For some of you, maybe it's to take a nice vacation. Or maybe you want $10,000 because you were like me and want to escape living paycheck to paycheck and feel like you can breathe financially. Whatever your reasons are, I highly suggest that you write those down on a sheet of paper or get images that represent the emotional feeling. One of the best ways of anchoring an emotion into our nervous system is to really understand how it's going to feel. So when you write your goals down for why they must happen and you create imagery, this is going to give you a strong emotional connection. So spend time really imagining what it's going to feel like having that first $10,000. Or spend some time really thinking about what it's going to feel like driving that next car of yours. Or perhaps you can imagine walking into that dream home and what that's going to feel like, or simply think about what it's going to feel like when you no longer living paycheck to paycheck and you have some freedom and flexibility with your finances. The next thing you're going to need to do is change the way that you look at time and money. One of the things that held me back from saving my first $10,000 was not looking at time and money in the proper way. I would catch myself buying things that wasn't really that expensive, things like $20, $50, $100 here or there. And I would justify those purchases because I figured that I needed them. However, one of the things that really completely changed the game for me was when I started thinking about it in relation to time. Let's say that you're making $15 an hour and you run across an item that you want to purchase that is $100. Instead of asking, is this item worth $100, you should understand how much time it's going to take you in order to make that purchase. In other words, $100 divided by $15 an hour is over 6 hours of your time. So the next question becomes, are you willing to give up 6 hours of your time for the particular item? One thing I've learned in my own personal journey is that you can always get more money, but you can't get back more time. And because we can't ever get back more time, we need to make sure that we're utilizing time in the most efficient manner possible. Oftentimes, I would not want to actually purchase the item because I'd rather have my time back. The next thing you want to do is to work on that budget. Even when I was living paycheck to paycheck, I understood the concept of having a budget and I knew it was important. However, there was a couple mistakes that I made that really prevented me from being able to make that step forward to the first $10,000. The first mistake I made when doing my budget was thinking in terms of generalities. What I mean by that is I would never get very specific. You see, I would say things like, well, I make about this much per month, and I think I spend about this much per month on food, gas, groceries, and things like that. And while I was probably in the general ballpark, not having that high level of specificity really prevented me from seeing what kind of income I could save and how quickly I could get to that first $10,000. The second mistake that I made was not doing a budget properly. You see, I did what was called poor people budgeting, where I would take my income, subtract all my expenses, and hope that there was some money left at the end of the month. But what I typically found was that every single month I ended up back at zero, living paycheck to paycheck. Here's how you budget properly to guarantee that you're going to save money every single month. The very first thing you do is identify how much money you make each month. Now, if you're someone who has fluctuating income, my suggestion is get an average of the last 6 to 12 months, or find the lowest month that you earned in the last 12 months and use that as your baseline. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to pay yourself first. Think of this as a wealth tax. So if you aren't saving any money right now, my suggestion is to start with as simple as 5 to 10%. So let's say that you earn $4,000 a month. 10% of $4,000 is $400. So you're gonna take that income and subtract $400 from it. The next thing you're gonna do is add up all of your fixed expenses. These are all the expenses that do not fluctuate. Things like your car payment, your cell phone payments, your rent or mortgage. Once you've subtracted your fixed expenses, then you move to your variable expenses, things like your food, your gas, and things that can vary from month to month depending on your overall lifestyle. Now, more than likely, once you do all that, you're probably going to end up in a negative number, assuming you've been living from paycheck to paycheck. If you do end up with a negative number, now you know how much money you need to budget out of your expenses in order to make sure that you save money. So anytime that I start with cutting my budget, I always start with the variable expenses, things like food. The next tip that I have is to get a separate savings account. There's a saying that goes out of sight, out of mind. And one of the things I noticed in my own personal journey was that if I had money in my account, even if I knew I shouldn't be spending it, just knowing and seeing that the money was there and that it was accessible to spend made it more likely for me to make purchases that wasn't 100% absolutely necessary for survival. One of the things that was a complete game changer for me was going and opening a separate savings account. This would be an account that was not easily accessible and would require extra steps in order to take out my money. If you want to take it one step further, go ahead and open up a separate savings account in a bank that you don't normally use already. This way you don't see it. Having money in a separate savings account really helped me get some major traction to that first $10,000. The next step on our list is to automate your savings. One of the tactics that I found that really helped me hit a lot of my financial goals over the years was to automate everything that I do, and that included my savings. I knew that if I was in charge of having to put that money from the checking account to the savings, that it probably wasn't going to happen, or there was also a good likelihood that I might spend that money before it hit my savings account. The way I viewed this automatic savings was just another bill that I had to pay every single month, and this once again was called my wealth tax. It was a bill or a tax I put on myself that guaranteed my financial freedom future self. Now, the next item on the list is to create a timeline for when you're going to save that first $10,000. One of the things that I've learned in my own personal journey is that goals without deadlines are simply wishes. For a long time, I would sit and think about having $10,000 and how great it would be. And I would tell myself, I'm going to save $10,000. The problem was I never put a deadline to it. And when you have goals with no deadlines, they simply become more of an idea or a wish. And hopefully, if you're lucky, maybe it will happen. However, when you put a deadline to something, it triggers your brain to say, okay, this is when it needs to happen, and it helps you more clearly see the steps that you need to take to make sure that you hit the goal in this deadline. What I would highly recommend doing is looking at how much time you think it's going to take you to save that $10,000. So let's say that you earn $2,500 a month, and you decide that you're going to save 20% of your income, or in other words, $500 a month. Well, if you take $10,000 and divide by 500, that means it will take you 20 months to get to your first $10,000. That's not even 2 years. Having goals and deadlines also makes things a lot more exciting, which is why I highly recommend that you put a timeline to your goals. The next item on our list is to break down your goals into smaller steps. For many of you, the idea of saving $10,000 really is a major jump, and it can seem overwhelming. However, this is a tactic that I've used to not only save my first $10,000, but to even do things like making my first $100,000 in a year, saving $100,000, or any other goal that I've had. Now, the way this step works is you want to take your goal and break it down into smaller chunks. For example, when I wanted to make my first $100,000 in a year, I took $100,000 and divided by 52 weeks out of the year. That came out to $1,900 a week. Divide that by 6 working days, and that came out to $320 a day that I needed to earn. While $320 a day still seemed like a bit of a stretch, it seemed a lot more obtainable than trying to imagine how to go from $30,000 a year to $100,000 a year. So my suggestion is take your goal and break it down into smaller steps. Create a daily savings goal. For example, if you wanted to save $10,000 in the next year, that's just a little over $27 a day. If your goal is to save $10,000 in 2 years, that's just under $14 a day. Breaking your goals down to smaller steps makes achieving that goal seem so much easier than just thinking about the end result. Now, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button if you want more videos on everything from personal finance, investing, making more money. My name is Shaun, and I help people escape the 9-to-5 and create financial freedom through entrepreneurship and investing. Be sure to check out some of my other popular videos in the description box below. Let's get out there and let's build that dream.